there's no introduction that really is needed here. I have a special guest, as you can see. Mark Hamill has decided to join us on this wonderful Friday, and I am really excited to turn it over to Mr. Hamill. Here we go.
Okay, how many of you had Mark Hamill will lead the press briefing on your bingo card? Hands? Yeah, me either. And look, I just got to meet the president. He gave me these aviator glasses. Oh, yeah. I love the merch. Love it all. But listen, I just wanted to say I was honored to be asked to come to the White House to meet the president, the most legislative successful president in my lifetime. And, you know, I don't have to go through the list, the bipartisan infrastructure law, the PACT Act, the CHIPS Act, all of that, inflation, 15 million jobs. Look, it's all good. I mean, I was really thrilled to meet the entire staff because, you know, it's not just one person. It's like a composite endeavor. And all these people, my goodness, you know, I mean, I have no idea. I had no idea just what went into what is on his plate on a daily basis. So that's pretty much it. I'm open to questions, although no Star Wars questions, please. But I want to say once again how grateful I am, and it just shows you that one person can be so influential and so positive in our lives, and again, thank you so much. And Peter Baker, I loved your book. Yes.
Wow. Thank you, Mark Hamill, for being here. What did you ask? What did you talk about with the president?
Well, first of all, I only expected to be there for like 5 minutes. He showed us all these photographs, and you know, it was really amazing to me because, you know, I was invited to the Carter White House, and I came, and then I came to the Obama White House. But I never was invited into the Oval Office, and it was a large gathering. So this one was really extra special.
All right, sir.
So, yes.
Can Biden bring up Star Wars too, sir?
Well, you know, I called him Mr. President. He said, you can call me Joe. And I said, can I call you Joby-Wan Kenobi? And he liked that. But listen, I'm not really here to dominate. I have to turn it back over to our wonderful Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being here. I got to get those shades. Thank you, guys. Thank you. No one ever claps for me when I get off the podium. I'm just saying. I know, the unexpected. Expect the unexpected. I don't even know where to go from there, but I do have, now I feel very by myself. Let's let the team come in. Thank you. Thank you, Sam, for joining.
Sure.
All right, okay. I do have a couple things before we get into, turn it into some serious business and take your questions. Thank you so much for indulging us today. We thought that might be a nice thing to do for you all to see Mark Hamill as he was here, as you just heard, visiting with the President Biden, here today. So today marks World Press Freedom Day, an occasion that highlights the importance of a free press, both of our democracy here in the United States and for our societies around the world. From exposing corruption and human rights abuses to covering communities and conflicts the world over, journalists risk their lives every day in the pursuit of truth, In a statement this morning, President Biden reaffirmed his commitment to support and take action in defense of media freedom. The Biden-Harris administration has already launched a robust government-wide campaign and built a coalition of countries to counter the proliferation and misuse of commercial spyware, which has been misused against journalists, and continues to provide legal and other support for media who face persecution around the world. The president also called again for the immediate, unconditional release of all journalists who have been detained around the world, including the Wall Street Journal's Evan Gershkovich, Radio Free Europe Radio Liberty's Alsu Kamashiva, and of course, Austin Tice in Syria. In the coming weeks, the president will take executive action in response to the global crackdown on press freedom, declare it a grave threat to national security, and authorize measures including sanctions and visas bans against those who attempt to silence the press. The United States stands by media around the world and will continue to do our part to support their important work. Today, we also have another important day event happening later today. President Biden, is naming 19 recipients of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The Presidential Medal of Freedom is the nation's highest civilian honor, presented to individuals who have made exemplary contributions to the prosperity, values, or security of the United States, world peace, or other significant societal, public, or private endeavors. We're honored to have these individuals or members of their families come to the White House today to celebrate their service. President Biden often says there is nothing beyond our capacity when we act together. These 19 Americans consistently demonstrated over their careers the power of community, hard work, and service. Finally, this morning, Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona sent a letter to schools addressing the sharp rise in anti-Semitic hate on college campuses. His letter made clear to schools that not only is anti-Semitism abhorrent and unacceptable, it is also discrimination prohibited under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Secretary Cardona reminded schools that the Department of Education provides a number of resources, including trainings, technical assistance, to ensure that school environments are free of discrimination. His letter comes one day after President Biden spoke to this very subject. As you all know, Americans have a right to free speech and peacefully protest, but breaking into buildings, destroying property, and shutting down campuses is not peaceful protest. There is also no place on college campuses or in America for anti-Semitism. This administration will continue to defend free speech while standing up for the rule of law. And Josh, good to see you.
Good to see you, Karine. May the force be with you.
May the force be with you, or tomorrow, the fourth be with you, however you want to look at it.
Let's hope we killed off the Star Wars jokes for the rest of the briefing.
I doubt it. I feel like there's more coming.
So, three subjects.
Yeah.
First, a top orthopedic surgeon at Shifa has apparently died in Israeli custody. He was 50 years old. If medical personnel are not going to be exempt from the war, how can Gazans hope to have any medical care? And what can you say to other doctors working in that area?
And so, look, that is a devastating news and devastating to hear. And our hearts go out to friends and families, his friend and families. That is certainly one of the hardest news that you can hear, a family member can hear, especially as someone is providing care in this situation in Gaza, where we know humanitarian aid is dire, and the innocent people of Gaza, the Palestinian citizens, obviously need that care. They need that assistance. So it is obviously devastating to hear. And the president has said, and has said very clearly, that when it comes to people who are citizens who are in Gaza providing that all-important care, humanitarian aid, humanitarian care, they need to be protected. They should be protected. And so certainly those conversations are going to continue. We believe that certainly Israel has made, the Israeli government has taken efforts to do just that and has taken into account our concerns. And so we're going to continue to have those conversations. But it is heartbreaking to hear. I can't speak specifically to that case and what occurred. Obviously, someone's life was lost, and we have to be certainly mindful. And we're at this time, I can offer my condolences. And we want to make sure innocent lives, innocent civilians, people who are certainly offering that humanitarian aid, their lives are protected as they're doing so.
Secondly, what can you say about reports that Israel has briefed the administration on its efforts to evacuate civilians before a Rafa invasion?
So what I can say this, and we've been pretty clear, we haven't seen a comprehensive plan, as it relates to their thinking on the Rafa operations. We have been also clear that of our concerns of any major operations, military operations into Rafa, we have said, and you all have heard us say, there's more than 1 million Palestinian civilians living seeking refuge in Rafa, and we want to make sure that they are their lives are protected. And so that is important, and we want to continue to have the conversations that we've been having with the Israeli government. As you know, those conversations have been led by the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. He was just here last week, as you all know, as well. And so we had two virtual conversations. We're hoping to have one in person. We want those conversations to continue. We believe that they are going to take Israel government is going to take our concerns into account, but we have not seen a plan. Comprehensive plan, and we want to make sure that those conversations continue, because it is important to protect those Palestinian lives, those innocent lives, those more than 1 million citizens who are seeking refuge in Gaza, in that part of Gaza, in Rafa.
And then, lastly, on campus protests, the president has drawn the line at violence, but he said he's not bringing in the National Guard. Does he think the police presence deters violence or exacerbates it?
So just to be very clear about the National Guard, that is something that governors decide on. That is a decision for them to make when it comes to the National Guard. And so want to just reiterate that again from here. And look, we have always been very clear when it comes to police presence on college and universities. That is certainly something that universities and colleges have to make a decision on. That is something that they decide what is right to move forward on their campuses and colleges. And we understand how painful this moment is. You've heard me say it is an incredibly charged time. It is a charged environment, and it is very difficult because of that charged environment for law enforcement. We also believe, and it is important, that all Americans can peacefully protest within the law. They have to be able to do that. It is, you heard from the president, it is part of our fundamental American principles, part of what make America's freedom, right, to be able to protest peacefully in this country. And it is also important, which is the second part that the president talked about yesterday, is the rule of law. We have to follow the rule of law. Violence is not protected here, but Americans have the right to peacefully protest within the law, and we're going to be very consistent here. And as I said, these are incredibly painful time, and it is a very charged moment, and we understand how difficult that could be. And so I'll just leave it there. Is that your 3 topics?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Excellent.
Thanks, Karine. So you say that you haven't seen a comprehensive plan for Rafa, but I am told by a U.S. official that the U.S. has been briefed on some sort of initial plan. So can you just tell us what the reaction was to Israeli counterparts about that initial brief?
So I'm going to be super mindful. These conversations are, these are diplomatic conversations. We don't read out in details and specifics on the conversations that we have certainly with all of our counterparts here. The last time there was a virtual meeting, we did have a readout there, but I don't want to go into details. We have been very clear in public and in private that our concerns with a large military operation into Rafa, we're not in support of that. And so obviously there's been conversations. There's been 2 virtual led conversation led by the National Security Advisor on this particular topic, Rafa operations. We read out to all of you the last time that the president spoke with the Prime Minister of Israel. Rafa operations came up in that conversations. We're not going to go into details from here, but I think we've made ourselves very clear. There are more than 1.5 million Palestinians who are seeking refuge there. And so we believe those lives need to be protected, and we're going to continue to have those conversations.
So to be clear, the U.S. was not satisfied with whatever the U.S.
I'm not.
On in this
I'm not going to go into details or specifics from here. We've been clear about our concerns. We're going to continue to be clear about our concerns here. Those conversations are going to continue, and I'm just going to leave it there.
And just switching gears a little bit, a new ABC News Ipsos poll found that nearly 4 in 10 Americans say the U.S. is doing too much to support Israel. That's up from about 3 in 10 in January, so it is showing that support for Israel is declining as the war drags on. Is the president concerned about this?
I'm not going to go into every poll that comes out. That's for political pundits to do. I used to be one. I'm not one anymore standing here at this podium. But what I can say is that we saw what happened on October 7th. We heard from Hamas, a terrorist organization, what they said that they would do. A leader from that organization said they want to see October 7th happen again and again and again. More than 1,200 souls were taken on that day. More than 200 Israelis, including some American hostages, were taken by Hamas. And as you know, we are working very hard to get that hostage deal so that we can bring hostages home, including those American hostages, create a situation where we have a ceasefire, right? So more humanitarian aid can go through. That is incredibly important. We're working around the clock to get that done. You saw Secretary Blinken in the region meeting with regional partners. And so that is certainly a priority and continues to be a priority for us. Our commitment to Israel's security is ironclad, as I've said, and we have said many times. They live in a tough neighborhood. And we saw what Iran did, right? They launched missiles and drones into Israel, and it wasn't just us that stepped in. It was leaders in the region that stepped in to make sure that they were able to defend themselves at that time. And so we want to get that hostage deal. That's what we want to see. We want to make sure that that innocent Palestinian lives are protected. That's why we're looking into the Rafa operations and having those conversations. But getting that hostage deal is so critical to bring hostages home, to get that more humanitarian aid in, and to have a ceasefire. And we are committed to doing that, and you see that from this president.
Thank you, Karine. You said that the U.S. has been clear about concerns about invading Rafah. Has it been clear about potential consequences if Israel moves forward?
Look, I'm not going to go into speculations or what consequences might be. We've made our concerns publicly and privately to the Israeli government. I just mentioned the president had a conversation with the prime minister in his last call with him, and Rafa operations came up. I'm not going to go into specifics. I'm not going to go into details. We have been very clear. There are 1.5 million Palestinians who are seeking refuge in Rafa, and we want to make sure those lives are protected, understanding that Israel needs to also defend itself, and having those Hamas operators there. We understand that they want to dismantle Hamas, and we understand that is a priority, obviously, and we certainly appreciate that. We also want to make sure that those 1.5 million Palestinian lives who are seeking refuge there are protected. And we believe there's a way to do that, and we're going to have those conversations. I'm not going to get into specifics from here.
We have learned that the King of Jordan is meeting with President Biden here at the White House next week. Can you share any details and talk about what's on the agenda?
So I can confirm that King Abdullah of Jordan will participate in a private meeting with President Biden at the White House next week while he is in town. I don't have any more details for you at this time. Certainly, we will provide a readout when that occurs. But I can confirm that meeting is indeed happening next week.
And then just to close the loop, what was Mark Hamill doing here today?
I think he said he was having a meeting. Did you not like having him here?
No, I mean, I was like, we all love
it
seeing him.
It sounded very kind of like, why here? He said it himself. We wanted to make sure that he provided, which is one of the reasons he spoke to why he was here himself. He wanted to meet with the president. They had a meeting, and well, you guys asked him questions. They had a meeting about what the president has been able to do on behalf of the American people. Mark Hamill was in town. They met. I think it was important as someone you all know Mark Hamill. He is someone who is very much invested in our country, very much invested in the direction of this country, and so they had a meeting. It was. He went into that meeting, and we thought it would be fun for him to come out here and lighten up the room a little bit on a Friday. We also believe that you guys there's some Star Wars fans in here, but the president meets with a lot of people. There's a lot of people that come through the White House that the president has an opportunity to sit down and talk with. You just happen to see Mark Hamill today because we thought it would be a nice gesture to have him come out and say hello. But I really wouldn't put too much into it. He meets with a lot of people here.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Geez, Rija is not happy about Mark Hamill being here. That's okay. I'm not going to tell him. He's not watching. Probably. I won't tell him.
I haven't.
Do you not like Star Wars? You have not seen Star Wars?
I will now. I will now. I know this.
That's why that happened, folks. That's why I got the question.
I'm gonna watch.
Oh, there's more. Wow. All right, I'm going to let that go. Let's continue. Oh, thank you, Gabe. All right. Thank you, Gabe. We thought it's Friday, y'all. It's Friday. A little bit of fun, Star Wars fun. Go ahead, Gabe. Now let's transition to what you actually want to talk about. Yeah.
I want to pick up on what Selena had asked.
Yeah.
Look, I know you said that you don't want to get into specifics, but just want to make sure we understand you and we're clear. You did say that Israel has not provided a comprehensive plan to invade Rafa. However, our reporting and reportings of others has suggested that they have briefed the White House on a plan. So what you're saying, by not saying comprehensive, you're saying that you have a plan, but you just don't think it's good enough.
What I can say is that they have certainly, there's been conversations that have happened over the last 2 virtual meetings. And what I can say is we have been clear on our position. We continue to be clear on our position. We've expressed our concerns with a major ground invasion in Rafa. We've been very clear about that, which would have significant risk against civilian casualties. And outline an alternative course of action. We have done that for them, outlined an alternative course of action for Israel to dismantle Hamas. So you could imagine, that there's been some back and forth on that. And so, we believe Israel will take our concerns on board. They will take our accounts into consideration as they plan their next operations. And so we'll continue to have these conversations. We'll continue to have these conversations.
Could this be a tactic on the part of Israel to try and pressure Hamas to take the field?
That's literally something for Israel to speak to. I cannot speak to their tactics. I cannot speak to their plan. I will say and reiterate that we are working very hard to get a hostage deal, obviously. And actually, what I will say is the Hamas has that deal. That is on the table. They need to take that deal. And you've seen us be very clear about that. You've heard from the Secretary Blinken this week, and so we need that hostage deal so that that could lead us to a ceasefire that can get those hostages home, including American hostages. And so we think it's important to get that done. But there is a hostage deal. It's on the table. Hamas needs to take it.
On a separate topic, well, sort of similar topic, but. One of the recipients today of the Presidential Medal of Freedom will be Congressman Jim Clyburn. He had some comments earlier today where he agreed with Senator Bernie Sanders' assertion that the Israel-Hamas war could be President Biden's Vietnam. What's your response to that?
So, look, a couple of things. I want to be super careful because that's kind of leading into a campaign space. So I want to be really mindful on what I say. And a couple of things that I did think through on this, knowing we probably get this potential question. Look, Joe Biden ended the longest war in American history and just succeeded in convincing both parties in Congress to make crucial investments in our national security in Ukraine to help ensure we won't be drawn into conflict in Europe. And that is the president's leadership that you have seen, right? And that is one of the reasons he's been able to bring NATO together in a way that we have not seen before. And obviously one of the reasons we had to do that is because we had to make sure that Putin didn't succeed. He didn't succeed. And so the president has been taking action, obviously, on that for the past more than 2 years. You heard him say yesterday, he reiterated values that being us together, we have the right to dissent, right? But it must be peaceful. It must be peaceful, and anti-Semitism is horrid. It is hate speech, and we should treat it as hate speech. And there is overwhelming support for his agenda, whether it's having, rich special interests pay their fair share. If you think about what the president's been fighting for, especially dealing with Congress, making sure that the billionaires and corporations pay their fair share, and making sure that we're building an economy that helps everyone, that doesn't leave anyone behind. And so you've heard him talk about that, beating big pharma, lowering healthcare costs, making sure that we move forward with his student debt relief. And so those are things that the president, and those agendas are incredibly popular. And so he's going to continue to do that work. And obviously, Congressman Clyburn is someone that he truly respects. We all respect. And so just, want to be mindful because it's connected to a campaign-related question. But this is a president who has taken action to make sure that he does everything, on behalf of, that's right, whether it's national security or moving forward with domestic policies that the American people want us to move forward on.
So the White House disagrees with that characterization?
Look, I think I just laid out what we believe we have been able to accomplish here in the more than 3 years in this administration. I think they have their opinions, and they're allowed to their opinions, and we respect what their opinions on this.
Does the U.S. believe that a Rafa operation is imminent?
That's something for Israel to speak to. What I can say is we've made our concerns very clear, publicly and privately. We've had two virtual conversations that have been led by the National Security Advisor. As you know, Jake Sullivan, he was here last week speaking to this. We are going to continue to be very, very clear on where we stand on this and our concerns for innocent civilian lives, more than 1 million innocent civilian lives that are now in Rafa that are seeking refuge there. I can't speak to a timeline. That is certainly for Israel to speak to. What we will say is we've made our concerns very, very clear.
The deadline for the administration to report to Congress on whether Israel is abiding by international law, that is next Wednesday. Do you know if the president himself has made a personal decision on that or has a personal view on that at this point?
Nothing to read out at this time.
Just on another topic, the speech that he is giving on Tuesday for the Holocaust Memorial Museum, can you give us a sense of how he is preparing for that, how the team is preparing for that?
So let me just say a couple things here, and you've heard us say many times before, and we'll continue to underscore how fighting anti-Semitism is at the core of who this president is. He was moved to run by the grotesque display of anti-Semitism in Charlottesville, as you all know and covered. Some of you covered back in 2017. And like I mentioned on Monday, he will deliver the keynote address at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum annual Days of Remembrance ceremony. During the Days of Remembrance, we remember and mourn the 6 million Jews who were systematically murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators during World War II. The president will discuss our moral duty to combat the rising scourge of anti-Semitism and the Biden-Harris administration's work to implementing the first ever national strategy counter anti-Semitism to make real the promise of never, ever, ever again. This is, when it comes to speeches, important big moments, like this, the president obviously takes this very seriously. He knows that this is going to be an important moment for the country to hear from him, and I don't have anything beyond what I just shared.
The focus of this speech will obviously be, as you said, the Holocaust survivors, anti-Semitism. Given just everything that's going on, does the president believe that it would be appropriate to also address in this speech the pro-Palestinian protesters and their sentiment, or does he believe that should be for a different
I'm going to
setting?
be super mindful. Not going to, as I've said many times, I'm not going to get ahead of the president. The speech is, in process, and so I'm going to let the president think through what exactly that he wants to share with the American people. Obviously, as I just stated at the beginning of my answer to you, fighting anti-Semitism is at the core of this president, and we have seen a rise in anti-Semitism. And we want to make sure that we make it very clear that it is hate speech, it is abhorrent, and so certainly you'll hear from the president very, very clearly on Tuesday, and certainly he'll share more. Go ahead.
Thanks, Karine. The White House brought on a new border person, Blas Nunez Neto. What is it? What is that? Is there any? Does that give any indications of urgency, speed of the executive order that the president has been considering?
So look, we look forward to the DHS Assistant Secretary joining the White House and continuing his work in implementing the administration's vision across the border security and immigration spaces. Don't have anything new to read out on any new announcements, but look, this is an administration that is committed to fixing the broken immigration system. On his first day of this administration, the first piece of legislation that he put forward was a comprehensive piece of legislation to deal with the broken system, to deal with what we're seeing with at the border, the challenges. And then we moved forward when that legislation was not moving forward in Congress. We had a 2-month negotiation process with senators to come up with a bipartisan proposal. And so that was rejected, as you all know, by Republicans because of the former president stating that this would hurt him and help Joe Biden. And that is unfortunate. We know that this is an issue. We talk about the immigration system that majority of Americans care about. And so,
That he could take.
look, we believe that the bipartisan border security agreement that came out of the Senate that was rejected by Republicans because of the former president is the best way to move forward in a comprehensive way. That's what we want to see. And I've stated this many times before, as it relates to any other actions, we're always going to look at other opportunities, other actions. We always will. Don't have anything to speak to announce at this moment. We actually want to see that bipartisan immigration agreement move forward. That's what we want to see. That is going to be the most comprehensive way to deal with a broken immigration system. You've heard me say this. If it is put into law, signed into law by this president, it would be the toughest and the fairest piece of legislative or law that we have seen in some time. This system has been broken. The immigration system has been broken for decades, and it's time that we act, and Republicans have an opportunity to do that. They have an opportunity to do that. Go ahead, April.
Karine, there's some very loud voices that are out there asking for President Joe Biden to issue a pardon to Marilyn Mosby, the former Baltimore City State's attorney who is waiting for sentencing, could face 40 years for taking her own money out of a retirement account to buy a house. And this group, to include Bakari Sellers and Angela Rye, have pulled together a lot of civil rights leaders. What is the president's thought about all of this, especially as she was one of those who really was groundbreaking in efforts of policing and accountability? And Bakari Sellers says that it looks like political persecution as well as retribution for what she did many years ago in the Freddie Gray case that still has yet to have accountability for his death.
So I want to be really mindful here because that is obviously a Department of Justice process, and I don't want to be certainly speaking to any individual pardon request. That is not something that I can do. The DOJ has their process. Department of Justice, as I just mentioned, employs a process that is thorough, that is deliberative, a process to review, when it comes to a process to review executive clemency petitions. And then individuals obviously submit their applications there. There's an application process. Want to be super mindful. Don't want to speak to an individual case here. And so I'm going to be really mindful. This is a Department of Justice kind of jurisdiction. And so I'm just going to leave it there.
But the president could indeed say, yes, I would like to see this happen, and add his voice to this petition?
Well, this is a Department of Justice. They go through a process. It's very thorough.
Right.
It's very deliberative. I don't want to speak I don't want to speak to any individual process. I gotta be super mindful here. Need to be really careful as DOJ Department of Justice runs this process. And so there is a application process for individuals. Certainly there's a route for them to go. I want to be really, really mindful. This is not something that we do from here, from this podium, as you can understand. Go ahead, Rachel. Go ahead.
I mean, I get what you're saying, that
Yeah.
there's an application process, but can the president support, or can the vice president and the president support the fact, yes, there should be a pardon, even if there is an application process, whether it happens or not?
As you know, when the president and the vice president weighs in, that is
It tips the scale sometimes.
I mean, you just laid that out. So I want to be really careful because there is a process that the Department of Justice has to go through. It is thorough and it is deliberative, and so we have to let that process go through. And I don't want to. I don't want to speak on that process, and just want to be really, really mindful here.
Well, is the president aware of what's happening in this case? Because she was one of the forefront persons
I know.
calling for accountability. It didn't happen in Baltimore, but there was a ripple effect with Ahmaud Arbery and Derek Chauvin and those with George Floyd. Is he familiar with this?
I certainly know who you're speaking of. I have not had an opportunity to speak to the president about this, so I can't. I can't say if I can't say the president's thoughts on this because I have not spoken to him about it. But obviously, it is very well known of what she has done. But I don't want to. I just want to be super mindful. This is a Department of Justice process. As you know, we're really, really careful from this podium. We respect that process here.
Thank you.
Russia's state-controlled energy company posted its first net loss since 1999 yesterday. Does the White House see that as efforts to isolate Russia working?
Say that one more time.
Yeah. Russia's state-controlled energy company posted its first net loss yesterday since 1999.
So I want to be mindful. I want to talk to our team about this. I don't have any information for you to dive into at this time. Let me take that and bring it back to the team.
Can I ask another energy question then too? Does the White House think the FTC made the right decision in approving Exxon's acquisition of Pioneer, even though the company has been accused of colluding with OPEC?
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on that either at this time.
Thanks, Karine. The International Criminal Court prosecutor issued a statement today warning against, quotes, threats and attempts to intimidate the court over his work. That comes after reports that both Israel and some members of Congress had warned of retaliation against the ICC if it charges Israeli officials. Just wanted to get your reaction to that, and and as to whether the White House would back retaliation against the ICC for charges against Israeli officials.
So we obviously oppose any threats or intimidation to public officials, including ICC officials. So obviously we're going to be always mindful and be very clear about opposing any type of threats or attempts to intimidate. That is something that you'll hear from us pretty consistently. But we've been clear. I was asked about this particular investigation by ICC a couple days ago. We do not support it. We do not support this investigative probe. We do not believe it's within their jurisdiction. We've been very clear about that, and that obviously still remains. I'm going to be you're asking me about what could be next, and if we would weigh in if they were to move forward. I'm not going to get into hypotheticals from here, but we've been very clear. We oppose this investigation. We do not believe it's within their jurisdiction.
Yes, thanks, Karine. The president was very clear in condemning the violence at the protest, but does he believe that any of the issues that have been raised by the protesters across campuses is legitimate?
What's the specific? Can you tell me the specific issues that you're hearing?
Like, for instance, solidarity with the victims, the ceasefire, the request for more aid, Free Palestine chants, that he believed that any of the things that these protesters are manifesting for is legitimate.
Well, can I just speak to the things that I understand you to lay out? As it relates to ceasefire, the president is pushing for a hostage deal, which would lead to a ceasefire. And if you have a ceasefire, this hostage deal, it would create an environment to get more humanitarian aid into Gaza. And you saw Secretary Blinken in the region just the other day. He did a press conference in Israel, and he talked about the increased effort that we have undertaken to get more humanitarian, to get more trucks into Gaza. And so we have seen an uptick, and so we want to continue to see that. But we have to see this hostage deal. So get to a ceasefire, get more humanitarian aid. We understand the dire situation that the Palestinian Americans the Palestinian citizens, are dealing with right now. And so we want to make sure that we get humanitarian aid in.
What about the requests from these protesters from universities to divest in
We
Israel
do not. That is. And I was asked this question, and we do not support that. Go ahead, Adam.
Thanks. On avian flu, we've talked with several hospital officials who have told us that the health system is essentially unprepared for another major health crisis if bird flu were to start spreading widely among people. In particular, hospitals don't have the manpower. There's still concerns about the ability to get supplies quickly, and communication and data sharing, they say, hasn't improved markedly since even before COVID. So I'm curious what the White House's response is to those concerns and whether there are any preparations ongoing to ensure we can respond to that kind of crisis.
So I want to, we are monitoring this very closely and taking this very seriously. It is a top priority for this administration to make sure that communities are healthy, safe, and certainly informed. So we're monitoring this closely. The president has directed his administration to do the following: protect public health, protect our nation's food supply, and monitor all trends to prevent the spread of avian flu. CDC they have reported that the risk for general public is low, and federal agencies are coordinating with local authorities. And so we're monitoring closely. We want to make sure that communities feel safe, they feel protected, and have the information that they need. And you heard from the CDC directly on this.
Is there a belief that the hospital, the health system as it stands, is prepared enough to withstand another major health crisis?
So that's not something for me to speak to from here. What we're doing is taking this very seriously. We're monitoring the situation. CDC has spoken to this and said the risk to the general public is low. I think that's important to note. And the president is on top of this, making sure that his agencies are doing everything that they need to do to make sure that communities are protected, that our communities are informed, and certainly are healthy.
On abortion, does the administration have any reaction to this report that a Texas man has filed a petition to state district court in Texas to try and investigate possible illegal activity that was committed, he's saying, by his ex-partner because she went to Colorado to get an abortion?
So wait, what? Say that one more
A
time.
man is looking to have an investigation into possible illegal activity. His ex-partner traveled out of state from Texas to Colorado to seek an abortion.
Look, that sounds like there's a legal case. Going to be careful not to respond from here. What I will say more broadly, and what we have continued to say, that the attacks on reproductive health care that we have seen and makes it incredibly difficult for women to make decisions on their own body, for their own health, is devastating. It is devastating what we're seeing. And sadly, because of what happened, the overturning of Roe, because of the Dobbs decision that happened almost 2 years ago, we have seen just chaos across the board. And we see tens of millions of women who are now at risk of not being able to make that decision. I can't speak to individual cases. What I can speak to is the chaos that we have seen. What I can speak to is what the president and this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, are committed to protecting a woman's right to choose, a woman's right to make a decision on her own body, on her own health care. And it's not just abortion, as you know. It's IVF that's under attack, contraception that's under attack. And so we're going to be very loud, continue to be loud and clear about that, and ask Congress to make sure that Roe becomes the law of the land, and they need to take action. Don't want to get into legal cases out there. I cannot do that from here. But as it relates to reproductive health care, we've been very clear, and we continue to do that from here.
Great.
Oh, go ahead.
Thanks, Greg. So the president says that he wants to let the Trump tax cuts expire. If that law expires, it does raise taxes on almost every American. So does he still support that expiring without anything else in place?
So look, as you said, the president is going to is going to let the Trump tax cut expire, and he was very clear. But he will not raise taxes on anyone making less than $400,000 a year. That is part of the budget that you saw come out, and it's going to expire for the wealthy. So been very clear about that. Look, this is a president that's going to make sure that we protect and not raise taxes for people making $400,000 and less a year. And Republicans want to do the opposite. They want to give tax breaks to corporations and billionaires. They said that. They want to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Who does that hurt? That hurts everyday Americans. And so the president has been really clear about that. He wants to expand Affordable Care Act, as you see him doing that for Americans, making sure that they have good health care. And so that's what the president is going to focus on.
The president can't pick and choose which part of the law sunsets. The entire law will sunset. And the tax foundation says that someone who's married, 2 kids, making $85,000 would pay $1,700 more in taxes. That's somebody under $400,000 who would.
The president has been very clear. He's going to protect working and middle-class Americans making less than $400,000 a year. He's been very clear on that about that. Republicans want to do the opposite. They literally want to do the opposite. They want to give a tax break to billionaires and corporations. That's what they said. They want to cut Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. That's what they want to do. And so the president's going to do everything that he can as he's building this economy from the middle out and the bottom up to protect everyday Americans. That's what he wants to do, make sure that the middle class is strong. That's what he's going to do. Republicans in Congress are saying the opposite. Literally, they're saying the opposite. So that's been the president's plan from day one, and he's going to continue that plan. Go ahead.
Thank you. A few things.
A few things. No, just one.
Don't make me pick. So in the president's remarks yesterday, he's talking about Islamophobia on campuses.
Yeah.
Lately, we've been seeing a lot of vile anti-Semitic rhetoric on campuses. Does he think Islamophobia is just as big of a problem on campus as anti-Semitism?
The president's always going to call out all forms of hate, always. And he had an opportunity to speak to the country. And we have seen what's been going on this campuses. Americans have the right to peacefully protest within the law, as we have said. It's part of who we are as a country, as when we talk about our freedoms, our democracy, to disagree and agree with each other, even about this war. It is our right to do so. It is right for folks to do so. You got to do it peacefully. You got to do it within the law. And we have seen the anti-Semitism, and we have called that out over and over and over again. And we've seen a spike in anti-Semitism. The president has been very forceful about that. He talked about his plan to counter anti-Semitism. He had an opportunity as he's talking to the country, the world really, on what has been happening across the country on college campuses, to call out anti-Semitism, to say that Americans have the right to peacefully protest. And we also have to call out all forms of hate. I believe, and I hope you would agree, Peter, that's an important thing for this president to do, if he has the opportunity to do that. When the president speaks, people listen.
Something else that had somehow slipped my mind
How is
over
that?
the last couple weeks.
Oh, goodness.
You are an alumna of Columbia University.
Wow, that's a shocker.
Well, you, in all the talking about it, you haven't brought it up. You told Columbia students a few years back, don't lose the idealism that you have. So what do you tell them now?
You did some research. Oh
all
my gosh.
I do is research and just hope that you call on me.
You did. You did some.
What do you tell the students who have followed you?
I mean, look, going to be, and that's actually going to be a great segue to the student journalist that we have in the room, Danny, after I answer this question.
I do have one more after that. Sorry, Danny.
It's okay. So, look, I'm not speaking on behalf of me. I'm not. I speak on behalf of this president. That's my job. And I believe in this president. I believe in the work that we do. It is an honor and a privilege to stand at this lectern every day to speak to you and all your colleagues and to take your questions. It is not about me. And really, your question and what you're asking me and what I have said to students is pretty much what the president has said. All Americans have the right to peacefully protest within the law. We have the right. That's what makes this country so great, right? That's what makes, when we're talking about our freedoms, our democracy, that's what's so important. To have the opportunity to agree and disagree and do it in a peaceful way, that's important. And the president also called out, if you are breaking an entry and you are taking over buildings, that is not peacefully protesting. And the president was very clear about calling that out as well, and also anti-Semitism, and calling it what it is hate speech.
My last one. At UNC Chapel Hill this week, a group of fraternity brothers saved an American flag from an angry mob of protesters. There is now a GoFundMe where people can donate to throw them a rager. It has raised more than $500,000. Would President Biden donate?
You never disappoint, my friend.
He donates to a lot of
You never
different
disappoint.
causes we saw in his tax returns.
I'll say this because there is actually a real point in your question that I will address, which is, and I, just to reiterate what we've said over and over again, Americans have, and I just said this moments ago, so I'll just reiterate this, all Americans have the right to peacefully protest. It is not right to forcefully take down the American flag to replace it with another flag. It is not right. And so I just wanted to make that clear as well. All right, Peter?
So a donation, what about like a call to thank them for saving the flag?
Look, protecting the American flag is admirable. I'll leave it there, Peter. Danny, it's your opportunity to shine. Everybody welcome Danny.
Welcome, Danny.
Danny goes to Uniondale High School, and she is a journalist at Uniondale High School. She wants to be where you all are at some point in her career. Okay, but you have a question?
Well, my question is, how can I, as an editor of my school paper, be able to encourage engagement globally?
Encourage engagement. So I think as an editor, it is certainly important to always make sure that, you listen to the community, but also get that information, work on getting the facts so that your community gets the facts, obviously. And I believe young people want to know what's going on in their community. I believe that young people are incredibly curious right now. And laying that out for them and saying, hey, this is what is going on, this is how you can learn more, or this is what you should know, is so important. And you should lead, not by fear, but by getting to the bottom of a story, getting to the bottom of how you're going to put those facts out. And I think it's important as you go through your career, your journalistic career. You have some really brilliant journalists here who certainly could give you advice. I'm sure they'd love to talk to you after this briefing. I'm sure they have time to do that, as they're all looking at me and smiling. And they could actually give you, I think, some really sound advice, some helpful advice on how to move through your career. But young people are curious. They're very curious right now. They want to know more. And this is a great opportunity for you as an editor at your high school to do just that and to have those important conversations, whether they agree or disagree, and lay out the facts for them. And so they can make decisions for themselves. Thank you for the question. All right, I'll take one more, guys. I'll take one more. Oh my gosh, go ahead.
Just to follow up on the press freedom executive actions that you mentioned, is there anything we can expect aimed at Russia in response to Evan?
So, as you know, we're going to be announcing some executive action shortly. Certainly don't want to get ahead of that. So once in the next couple of weeks, we'll have more. We'll have more to share. Don't have anything at this time, but we're working through that, and we think it's really important. We think it's really important to continue to take action. A free and independent media is critical. As I just took a question from a high school future journalist, who's a journalist now, obviously, at her high school, and it is vital to our global security. We appreciate the work that journalists do every day, and it is many journalists put their lives at risk, put their lives at stake. And so, and you hear me say this before, journalists are not the enemy, and they should be protected, and freedom of the press. What we do here every day, it is an exercise of the freedom of the press. And so we want to make sure that that continues, not just here, but obviously globally. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great weekend.